Ethan Harper never imagined a routine Black Friday would unravel his life. But Clara Bennett's hidden secrets, Marcus Shaw's silent watch, Sophie Lane's growing fear, and Julian Cross's calculated patience were about to collide in a deadly storm that no one could escape. Please subscribe for daily new update of Crime Story and watch till end. It was early morning on Black Friday, and the usually calm streets of suburban London were buzzing with an unusual energy. The sun reflected off the freshly polished windows of the houses, making the neighborhood appear almost too perfect, like a postcard. Yet beneath this shiny facade, tension simmered in the lives of a few residents, lives that were about to collide in a way no one could predict. Ethan Harper walked briskly along the pavement, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his dark jacket. Something felt off, though he couldn't quite name it. The familiar faces he passed seemed ordinary, but he noticed subtle shifts in body language, a hurried glance, a nervous step, a hand clenching a bag a little too tightly. Clara Bennett was already awake, her mind racing as she checked her phone again. A message she had received the night before made her stomach twist. She knew Ethan would notice if anything was amiss, and she couldn't risk revealing even a hint of her secret. She glanced toward the window expecting him to be outside, but he had disappeared down the street. She wrapped her red coat tightly around her and stepped out, trying to act as normal as possible while hiding the fear that gnawed at her. Across the street, Marcus Shaw watched the comings and goings with sharp, calculating eyes. He had learned to read the quietest signs, the tiny hesitations in people's movements, and he sensed that today, something significant was about to happen. Marcus had a reputation in the neighborhood for being unpredictable, a man whose presence alone made people uncomfortable, yet he lingered, blending into the crowd of shoppers heading to stores for early deals, pretending to be ordinary while observing everyone around him. Sophie Lane hurried past the scene, clutching her shopping bag tightly. She tried to keep her pace brisk, but her eyes kept darting over her shoulder. She didn't know why, but a sense of danger hung in the air, invisible yet undeniable. Even the usual Black Friday chaos felt different, heavier, as though the excitement of sales masked a darker rhythm beneath. Julian Cross leaned against a lamppost near the corner, seemingly relaxed, but his mind working rapidly. He had come for something other than bargains, something that required careful timing and an understanding of human behavior. Every passerby was a potential piece in a larger plan, every interaction a move in a game only he fully understood. He watched Ethan and Clara separately, noting their patterns, the subtle ways they reacted to each other, the unspoken tension that pulsed between them. As the morning wore on, these 5 lives, each carrying secrets and motives, unknowingly moved closer to each other. The quiet streets and sunny day betrayed the storm that was forming, a storm that would soon erupt in ways no one could have predicted. Shadows lengthened along the pavement, and the bright reflections of windows and cars could not hide the tension building beneath the surface. On this Black Friday, something was going to shatter the ordinary, something that would leave the neighborhood forever changed. And the first threads of that fateful day were just beginning to weave together. The chaos of Black Friday shopping grew louder as Ethan moved through the crowded streets, each step heavy with unease. He had planned to keep the day simple, just a few errands before heading home, but an unfamiliar tension tugged at him. The neighborhood that usually felt safe now seemed layered with invisible threats. Shoppers jostled past him, their excitement and impatience creating a strange energy that made him more alert. Every sound, the screech of tires, the distant chatter, the clatter of shopping carts, felt sharper, more deliberate, as though they were clues pointing to something unseen. Clara's heart raced as she navigated the crowd inside a small boutique. Her eyes scanned every face, every movement. She knew someone was watching, though she couldn't be sure who. The message from the night before had left her in a state of panic she could not shake. She felt exposed, like a secret she had carefully hidden was dangling just above her, ready to fall. Her breathing became shallow, each step echoing against the polished floors. A casual shopper brushed past her shoulder, and she flinched, her mind racing with possibilities she could barely articulate. Meanwhile, Marcus remained on the fringes, observing from a distance, blending into the chaotic scene. He noticed small details, how Ethan's hands tightened in his pockets, the subtle way Clara kept glancing over her shoulder, the way Julian's posture shifted depending on who passed near him. Marcus thrived on these observations. Every reaction was a potential advantage. He could sense the tension building, like the air before a storm. His mind calculated probabilities, assembling fragments of behavior into a picture he alone could see. Sophie moved cautiously along the street, weaving between shoppers, clutching her bag as if it could shield her from the growing unease. She had sensed the subtle shift in the neighborhood long before anyone else, a whisper of danger that made her heart pound. She tried to convince herself it was just Black Friday frenzy, that the nerves were normal, but deep down she knew something was wrong. The crowd that normally made her feel anonymous now felt suffocating, each person a possible witness, each glance a potential threat. Julian's eyes never left Ethan and Clara. He understood the tension, the silent dance of suspicion and fear between them, and he was patient. Timing was everything, and he could wait. He adjusted his stance slightly, blending into a group of shoppers, yet ready to step forward at the exact moment the situation demanded. Every movement he made was calculated, every gesture controlled. He sensed the first cracks forming in the carefully constructed normalcy around him, and he knew that soon, the chaos of the day would serve as the perfect cover for what he had planned. As the hours passed, the 5 lives continued to move through the bustling streets, closer yet still unaware of how intertwined their fates had become. The bright sunshine and polished storefronts belied the growing tension in the air. Each decision, each glance, each silent observation was building toward a collision that no one could predict. On this Black Friday, normalcy was a fragile illusion, and the threads of deceit, suspicion, and danger were tightening around everyone involved, slowly leading them toward the day's inevitable, brutal revelation. By midday, the streets were filled with a relentless surge of shoppers, the hum of conversation and the clatter of carts forming a chaotic backdrop. Ethan moved cautiously, his instincts on high alert, each step measured as though he could sense something lurking just beyond his vision. He had begun noticing patterns in the crowd, who lingered too long, who glanced around nervously, who seemed oddly out of place. His unease had grown into a knot in his stomach, one that refused to loosen. Something about the day felt off, more than the usual frenzy of Black Friday. Clara, meanwhile, had slipped into a quiet alley between 2 bustling shops, attempting to regain control over her racing thoughts. Her hands shook slightly as she pressed her phone to her ear, even though no one answered. The message she had received last night haunted her, a silent accusation that refused to be ignored. She kept replaying it in her mind, imagining every possible outcome, each one darker than the last. Her nerves were fraying, each step forward shadowed by the fear that Ethan or someone else might discover her secret at any moment. Across the street, Marcus observed everything with a calculated gaze. He had learned to read people like open books, to see their hidden anxieties and exploit them when necessary. Today the crowd provided the perfect cover for his quiet scrutiny. He noted Ethan's tightening jaw, Clara's nervous glances, and Julian's deliberate positioning near the storefront windows. Each movement was a small thread in the tapestry of events Marcus had been anticipating. He knew the tension was mounting, and with the right timing he could push the situation to his advantage. Sophie hurried past a cafe, pausing only to adjust the strap of her bag and glance back at the street. Her instincts screamed at her that something dangerous was near, yet she could not identify the source. The energy around her was suffocating, as if every casual gesture was loaded with hidden meaning. She felt eyes on her, though she could see no one in particular, and the paranoia began to gnaw at her mind. The bright afternoon sun did nothing to ease the feeling of dread creeping over her. Julian had found a vantage point on a balcony above a popular electronics store. From there, he could observe the neighborhood without being noticed. He watched Ethan, Clara, Marcus, and Sophie, noting their interactions, their hesitations, their silent signals. He understood the subtle language of fear, of deceit, of anticipation. Everything was aligning according to his plan, though he had to wait patiently for the perfect moment. The street below seemed ordinary, yet he could see the tension coiling like a spring, ready to snap. As the day progressed, the lives of these 5 individuals became increasingly intertwined. Each glance, each movement, each choice was drawing them closer to an unseen collision. The bright, sunny day and sparkling storefronts contrasted sharply with the underlying sense of impending danger. On this Black Friday, normalcy was nothing more than a fragile illusion, and the shadows of betrayal, fear, and hidden motives were closing in from all sides. The tension was palpable, and by evening, the threads of suspense were about to unravel, exposing truths that no one was prepared to face. As the afternoon shadows stretched across the quiet suburban streets, the tension in the air became almost tangible. Ethan's unease had evolved into a sharp edge, each movement and glance around him charged with suspicion. He walked slower now, trying to blend into the crowd while secretly analyzing everyone in his path. Something told him that today would not end as it had begun, and the sense of impending confrontation gnawed at him relentlessly. The noise of shoppers, the jingling of cash registers, and the laughter spilling from cafes all seemed to amplify the unease that had settled over him. Clara moved more cautiously than ever, weaving between people with an air of controlled panic. Her mind raced, replaying the secret that had started it all, the one she had hoped would never come to light. Each face in the crowd seemed to carry a judgment, each passerby a threat. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet she could not turn back. She had made choices that could not be undone, and now she could only move forward, hoping no one noticed the tremor in her hands or the tightness in her chest. Every reflection in shop windows, every shadow stretching across the pavement seemed to mock her, reminding her that nothing remained hidden for long. Marcus observed silently from the periphery, leaning against a lamppost near a small grocery store. He had perfected the art of watching without being seen, of turning ordinary behavior into a map of intentions and weaknesses. His eyes followed Ethan and Clara, noting the subtle ways they reacted under pressure. He could sense the tension between them and understood that it could be manipulated to his advantage. Marcus had patience. He knew that all it took was a single spark to set the situation ablaze. He waited, calculating, reading, preparing for the exact moment when the threads of fear and deceit would intersect. Sophie's pace quickened as she moved down a narrow lane, her instincts screaming at her that something was about to go terribly wrong. She felt trapped in a bubble of anxiety that refused to dissipate, the bright sunlight failing to chase away the shadows gathering in her mind. Every turn of the street seemed familiar, yet unfamiliar at the same time, as if the very ground beneath her feet had become unpredictable. She could not shake the feeling that someone was watching, following her every step, yet every glance over her shoulder revealed only ordinary strangers. The uncertainty was unbearable. Julian remained aloof, yet ever present, strategically positioning himself near the intersection where the crowd thinned. From here he could observe all 4 without being noticed, cataloging every movement, every hesitation, every silent signal. He understood the delicate balance of timing and perception, and he knew the window for action was closing. The tension between the group had grown, subtle yet undeniable, and Julian sensed that the moment for intervention was approaching. The neighborhood, bathed in the late afternoon sun, seemed deceptively peaceful. Shiny shop windows and cheerful storefronts hid the invisible web of secrets, suspicion, and fear twisting around the 5 lives. With every step they took, the collision between desire, betrayal, and revenge drew closer. The day's chaotic energy had shifted. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shatter the illusion of safety. On this Black Friday, the ordinary had begun to fracture, and the calm before the storm was about to end in ways no one could imagine. As evening approached, the streets of the neighborhood were bathed in a golden glow, but the warmth of the sunlight could not mask the unease that had settled over the residents. Ethan's mind raced, every instinct screaming that the day was far from ordinary. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes on him, a constant pressure that made his muscles tense and his heartbeat quicken. Each passerby seemed to hold a hidden meaning, every reflection in the glass a silent observer. He had always trusted his intuition, and today it warned him that something dark was about to unfold. Clara's steps were more hurried now, her breathing shallow as she moved between the scattered groups of shoppers. The secret she had carried in silence was pressing against her from all sides, and the fear of discovery had grown into a sharp, gnawing pain. She could feel Ethan's gaze on her, even from a distance, and the realization that he might uncover the truth made her stomach churn. Every choice she had made, every hidden action, now seemed like a thread stretched too thin, ready to snap at any moment. She clutched her purse tighter, as if it could somehow shield her from the storm gathering around her. Marcus remained an almost invisible observer, his figure blending into the shadows of doorways and corners. He had studied the group long enough to understand their routines, their fears, their weaknesses. Today, all of those small, seemingly insignificant details had become pieces of a puzzle, and Marcus knew the right time to act was nearing. He noticed Ethan pausing to adjust his coat, Clara glancing nervously at the window display, Sophie darting across the street, and Julian leaning against the wall watching everything unfold. Each motion confirmed that the tension was reaching a breaking point, and Marcus's anticipation grew with every passing second. Sophie's nerves were at their peak as she moved faster through the narrowing streets, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the invisible threads of danger tightening around her, each step a reminder that she was no longer simply an observer in the unfolding drama. Every glance over her shoulder revealed only ordinary shoppers, yet the dread in her chest insisted that something sinister lurked nearby. Her instincts were screaming warnings she could not fully interpret, and the sense of being trapped in a world that had suddenly shifted was overwhelming. Julian remained calm, almost eerily so, from his vantage point across the street. He understood the weight of timing, of being in the right place at the right moment. His eyes followed each movement, calculating, predicting, preparing. The subtle tension building between Ethan and Clara, the fear in Sophie's eyes, and the watchful presence of Marcus, all of it formed a web of potential outcomes. Julian knew that one decisive move could set everything in motion, and he waited for that perfect instant, confident in the precision of his plan. The neighborhood, still gleaming under the fading sunlight, seemed unchanged to outsiders. The storefronts shimmered, the cars reflected the last rays of light, and the street buzzed with ordinary activity. Yet beneath the surface, the currents of fear, suspicion, and hidden motives were converging. Each step taken by the 5 individuals drew them closer to a collision that none of them could have anticipated. Black Friday had become more than a day of shopping. It was a stage for secrets, lies, and dangerous intentions, and the moment of truth was approaching with an unrelenting inevitability. The late afternoon light had begun to fade, casting long shadows across the suburban streets, making every corner seem darker and more menacing than before. Ethan moved cautiously, sensing that the tension he had felt all day was about to break. His eyes flicked from one passerby to another, each movement analyzed, each shadow examined. The unease he had carried since the morning had transformed into a sharp edge of anxiety, and he could feel his pulse quickening with every step. Something was about to happen, he knew it, though he could not predict what. Clara's mind was a whirlwind of fear and regret. She had tried to act normal, to blend into the crowd, but her body betrayed her. Her hands shook slightly, her eyes darted nervously at every reflection in the shop windows, and her heart raced as if warning her of the inevitable. The secret she had hidden so carefully was no longer a quiet presence. It was a living weight pressing down on her, and the possibility of exposure made her stomach twist with dread. She moved faster now, hoping to get home before anything catastrophic could unfold, though a part of her knew that it was already too late. Marcus remained in the shadows, his eyes sharp and calculating. He had watched the day unfold, noting each small movement, each gesture of unease, and every unspoken tension between the group. To him this was a game of observation and patience, and the pieces were finally aligning. He noticed Ethan pausing, as if sensing a presence behind him, and Clara's subtle flinch when a stranger brushed past. Sophie's hurried steps and Julian's careful observation all contributed to a scene Marcus understood far better than anyone else. He knew the tension was at its peak, and all it would take was one small spark to ignite chaos. Sophie felt a cold shiver run down her spine as she turned a corner and found herself in a quieter part of the neighborhood. The crowds had thinned, and the usual noise of Black Friday shopping was replaced by an eerie stillness. Her instincts screamed at her that danger was near, though she could see no immediate threat. Every shadow seemed to move with purpose, every reflection in a window seemed to hide unseen eyes. She kept her bag clutched tightly, her mind racing with scenarios, none of which ended well. The unease that had been simmering all day had grown into a palpable fear that pressed against her from every direction. Julian remained detached, calculating and patient. From a strategic vantage point, he watched Ethan, Clara, Sophie, and Marcus, noting the subtle interplay of fear and suspicion. He understood the rhythm of the moment, the precise timing that would allow him to manipulate events without being seen. The tension in the group had reached a boiling point, and Julian could sense that the first cracks were about to appear. He adjusted his stance slightly, ready to act when the moment demanded, knowing that a single move could change everything in an instant. The neighborhood, still glowing under the fading light, seemed tranquil to anyone passing by. But the calm was deceptive. Beneath the surface, the invisible threads of fear, deceit, and hidden agendas were tightening around the 5 individuals. Each step they took, each glance they exchanged, each hesitation brought them closer to a moment that would shatter the ordinary and reveal the dark truths that had been carefully concealed. On this Black Friday, the tension had reached its limit, and the storm waiting to erupt was only moments away.